Our media product uses and develops codes and conventions of real media products from what we've researched. During our research stages, we found that the majority of films that wanted to create a suspense effect used the typewriter font. We chose to try this out and found that it was already a very effective way of engaging an audience to our suspense-filled film. This is because the typewriter is slower in appearing than usual text and appears as if someone is currently typing. In addition to this, we believe that this type of font makes it more personal, and this is a significant element of our film as it is based around an individual's suicide story. Another code or convention we followed for our type of film was that the majority of shots we used were in point of view. This was evidently used in a lot of other school-based films. For example, although One Tree Hill is not a film, one of their episodes was about a school shooting, and a lot of their filming was done in the point of view of the main character, who was the school shooter. Again, this makes the film much more personal and tense as you begin to sympathise with the person who is in point of view, whilst also worried about what they're going to do. This is an effective code and convention of films that want to build up a lot of suspense, as it worked effectively in the One Tree Hill episode and also in the elephant film that we found during research. Like most films of our genre, we had our main character wearing a hoodie, which is conventional to someone trying to hide something. This mise-en-scène allowed us to play with gender as well, as the audience stereotypically believed that our main character is male. However, we challenged this convention by casting a female main character to be our school shooter. This was because we wanted to be more adventurous and see if our final product would get as many views as it would if the character was male. Although we challenged the gender, we cast our character based on the ethnicity that is represented to society in terms of shootings. Through research, we found that Charles Whitman and Adam Lanza plus many other were white male shooters. We additionally noticed that in One Tree Hill school shooting episode and in the elephant shooting, the shooter was white. And so we did cast our main character who was white. Lastly, we ended our opening sequence on a cliffhanger, again like many other films of our genre. This was a very successful way of gaining the audience's attention and ensuring that they continue watching the film. This was because it's a gripping way and leaves the viewers intrigued into what's going to happen next. Our film is targeted at a teenage to young adult audience, so for around 13 to 25 years old. Our product represents the teenage group in society in a very negative way, as from our research we found that this is what many films do of our genre. Firstly, it represents teenagers of not having it together. So an example of this in our film is that the storyline itself is that our main character, Betty, does not have it together at all. And we made this evident through the use of camera, constantly shaky and out of focus. And this was to imply to the audience that she was not thinking clearly about what she was about to do. So Betty is young and already wants to end her life along with the lives of many others. Another representation of teenagers in our film is that they are constantly trying to fit in, and if they don't, then they can become very isolated from society. As an example of this in our film is that the majority of the opening scene is filmed in point of view shot, which shows how isolated she is and how she's always looking out at everyone else who is in groups or always looking out at other people and alone on herself. It also suggests that teenagers are very depressed and that social life is very important to them and a big part of their lives. In our opening, this can be seen when Betty is constantly filming other people and is walking alone. So even when it's not in point of view, the shot always shows that Betty is alone with her hoodie up, making her seem very isolated from society. The story of the suicide because of her unhappy school life implies that her having a good social life means everything to a teenager. And lastly, it also implies that teenagers can be very lost and lonely in school life. An example of this again is Betty is always walking alone the whole time, which makes her appear to have no friends and shows that she's lost literally. So here are some examples in our opening that you can see representations of teenagers. So here is the point of view shot. So we got one of her on the bus, one of her looking at the bus, and also one walking into school. It's always quiet in her world. She's always alone. Then there's another wide-angle shot of her walking alone into school, again with her hoodie up. And there's another shot of her walking into school, always with her hoodie up. And it's also very dark at this point, so when she walks into the school doors, which does again imply that something bad's going to happen. And it implies she has negative thoughts again. From research, we found that the most popular genre of film to be distributed in the UK were drama and thriller films, which is good for us because that is our type of film. So about 22% of thriller films were distributed and about 38% of dramas. Our film would be distributed by an independent company as it's only a small film. We also would use YouTube and other social medias to advertise our film. Okay, so the target audience for our film would be a range from 14 years to around 25 years old. And we chose this age range because we believe that many teenagers can relate to the feelings behind the story, and that is the main reason as to why people watch films, due to they could relate to them. We also believe that adults and teachers may also be interested in our film, although this isn't in the target audience range. We didn't believe that there would be as many people interested in our film that are over 25, so we kept it as 14 to 25. But they still may be interested as they may want to gain an understanding into how difficult teenage life is at school. We also believe that intellectual people will be interested in our film as psychographics of our film are interested in psychology, understanding individuals and looking into a tortured mind. They are quite intelligent and mature enough to understand the seriousness of the nature of our film. This is because it is a sensitive topic, and it is looking into how someone could want to commit such an atrocity. We also attracted our audience as the film was very psychology based, and it looked into how and why people do these things. And so it does have real life applications. So, for example, the Columbine High School shooting, it could apply to that. In other films we've seen, such as Elephant that we found and Bang Bang You're Dead, they also use real high school shootings and apply them to their films, which is a main reason as to why people watch films, as they're based on real life events. So I questioned someone who is currently 17 years old and asked them why they would be interested in our film, and so here is what Abby said.
I enjoy these genres of film because of the nature of them. I'm a psychology student myself and believe that this is why I enjoy them, as I can get an understanding into why people commit such atrocities. I also enjoy it because of the target audience these films are aimed at. I'm 17 and I believe that I can identify and relate to many of the characters in this film, which I believe is the main reason as to why people watch these films, as they can connect with the characters. In addition to this, I also think the setting of the film is important. As it's in a college, I think this will attract people that attend college, as they, again, can relate to this place.
As our film was all about increasing suspense, we had to somehow engage or attract our target audience. So this was quite difficult because we couldn't actually show our main character. But actually this was helpful, as keeping the murderer's identity a secret by always keeping her in a hoodie, or filming her from behind, or actually using a point of view shot, enabled us to build that suspense and engage the audience, as they would want to carry on watching so they could find out the identity of the main character. Our music was quite thriller and suspense, and we found that as the music went on and continued, the tension of our film increased. So the music really did accompany our film well as it began to get more dramatic. Our main character, Katie, she was getting closer and closer to the school. So we found this worked really well, and it built tension. I've learnt about technologies from the process of constructing this product. I've learnt quite a lot. I've learned how to use new software such as Final Cut Pro, and I've also learnt how to manage a blog. I've had to keep my blog up to date, blogging weekly of the things that I'm doing, and I've also learnt how to use a tripod to keep the camera steady. I've used the new camera. I've also used an X grip to keep when filming down low by Katie's feet. We use that. I've also used new sound effects and filters and pre-recorded sound, and I've used social media to raise awareness of our film. So we used a Facebook page and we showed it to our friends over Twitter. Every decision that we had to blog, and so that was new for us because we had to keep things up to date constantly. Looking back at our preliminary task, I think we've learned quite a lot from the progression from that to our final product. Our preliminary task wasn't as successful as our final product due to many reasons. As it was our first attempt at creating an opening, we didn't really know a few significant things. This time around, we have learned a lot more about specific angles and to gain the effect that we want. So an editor came in that edits QI, and he visited us and gave us some useful advice on how to create the effect we want. And so we told him our opening to our film, and he said that close-ups and point-of-view shots are really good and give really good effect for our type of film. So throughout our opening, we have chosen to use this as much as possible. We also learned about the 180-degree rule and ensured that we followed it in order to gain we didn't make any mistakes. As in our preliminary task, we actually didn't follow the 180-degree rule and made a few mistakes, so therefore we had to film again. In addition to this, we've also learned how to effectively record sound. So when recording in our preliminary task, we found that the sound that we recorded was a very poor quality, and that the noise was so strong in the background, so we had the wind and people talking, that you could barely hear the dialogue that we were trying to record. And so therefore we did some research into how to make sure the sound was perfectly recorded. We found that pre-recording the sound before filming was an effective way of making sure that the sound was good, but actually we didn't have any speech to record, so in our opening task we chose to use pre-recorded sound effects, and they worked really well and they were clear. Also in our preliminary task, our quality of camera work was nowhere near as good as our real product. An example of this in our preliminary was when we filmed the clock. So every time we filmed this, we filmed it by hand, and so it was really shaky, kind of out of focus. So by using the tripod in our real one, we found that we could make everything seem much more in focus and straight, and it worked much better. So we learned how to effectively use equipment. And we'll like direct. I wondered when you might get here. Please sit down. So, you fed the fish?
Yes, I've taken care of it.
Good.
What do you want me to do next?
I was just coming to that.